Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the India Today Conclave. We live in a polarized era where nothing seems to divide public opinion or political opinion at times in particular as much as the state of the economy at the moment. It's been said that there are lies, damned lies, and there are statistics. In these polarized times, therefore, figures on the state of the economy are thrown at us that are designed to often confuse as much as to illuminate. So where does the elusive truth lie on the state of the Indian economy? That's what we want to discuss with two very fine minds. My first guest is someone who has given, 9 budgets, speeches, has been one of the most distinguished finance ministers the country had, author of the Dream Budget of 1997 that brought, importantly, all our tax rates down. Please welcome Mr. P. Chidambaram. And with him is Neelkanth Mishra. He's Chief Strategist Asia at Credit Suisse and also a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. So thank you both, Neelkanth Mishra and P. Chidambaram, for joining us today. What I'm going to do is going to keep this simple so that I will let you take the floor on each specific issue. I will throw one figure or I'll throw two figures which perhaps have two varying interpretations, and you can tell us what the state of the economy looks like today. Let's start, Mr. Chidambaram, with GDP. The government says, despite the global slowdown caused by COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war, the Indian economy is expected to grow at 7% plus in fiscal 22-23, the highest rate of growth among all major economies. So that's one number. The other number, which perhaps Neelkanth could respond to, is that the last quarter has seen a slowing down to 4.4%, and the likes of Raghuram Rajan are saying we are slipping back towards the so-called Hindu rate of growth, and therefore we have less to celebrate, more to introspect. Two numbers, 7% growth rate 22-23 versus a slowing 4.4% in the last quarter. Mr. Chidambaram, what's the reality?
The reality is we are growing, but the quarter upon quarter growth or the sequential quarter growth is declining. 13.2%, 6.3, 4.4, and the fourth quarter, my estimate is between 4.1 and 4.3. So it is a declining quarterly growth rate, which means Indian economy is losing steam.
So you're saying the Indian economy is losing steam, but you accept that the Indian economy continues to grow among major economies faster than most other economies in the world.
There's no boast in saying, I'm the one-eyed monarch of the blind. The point is, China, when it grows at 3% or 3.5%, will still add every year to its annual wealth or annual output, several times more than India, growing at 7%. China is 5.5 times larger than India. Therefore, the relevant number is the per capita income. And the per capita income, we are still a very poor country.
Neelkanth Mishra, how do you see these numbers when it comes to the GDP numbers that the government throws at us, saying, look, we are the fastest growing economy in the world? On the flip side, Mr. Chidambaram could argue saying that we are a slowing economy, and there could be those who would argue that even pre-pandemic, for 9 consecutive quarters, the Indian economy was in decline. So what are we celebrating at the moment?
So we have to first understand that no economy is an island. There is a world where there is a significant decline in global growth. Demand for global goods is at March 21 level. So for 2 years, there's been zero growth in demand for retail sales of goods. There is significant financial uncertainty. There are several economies that have gone into bankruptcy. I think what India should aim for and is aiming for is macroeconomic stability. Because remember that economics is not about scoring a run or a six on every ball. It's about being able to stitch together a long innings and create a much larger wealth and income range for its citizens. So what is extremely important right now is that in this global financial turbulence, if India is seen as a stable economy, it will continue to attract foreign investors. It will continue to attract foreign companies which can bring skills and technology. And so on a 5-year basis, I think the expectations of India's GDP growth should be that India will contribute 12 to 15% of incremental GDP in the next 5 years. So I think we have to stop looking at, and let me tell you that quarterly GDP numbers are extremely inaccurate. They keep getting revised up. You must have seen that past data, when they released these data, past data was revised up by 1.3%. So the level of GDP in FY23 has been raised up by 1.3%. So as per the NSO's numbers, fourth quarter GDP growth is going to be 6%. Everyone expects FY24 GDP to be 6% plus. I think it should be 7%. So I think we have to be a lot more forward-looking. Many other measures, and I'll just take half a minute, many other measures like, say, the sales of the BSE 500 companies, there is absolutely no slowdown in output.
Taking off from what Mr. Mishra said, he used the word macroeconomic stability in particular. And let me throw another number, which is contentious: inflation. In India, averaging 5.5% in the last year, much less than most South Asian countries and the Western world. The Modi government says, compared in particular to the UPA years, we have done much better in keeping inflation under control. Inflation during the UPA years was double digit.
In the UPA years, between 2009 and 2011, inflation was indeed very high. And the reason is obvious. It was because Mr. Mukherjee, I think, following other finance ministers, believed in stimulus packages. We spent money which we did not have, and therefore inflation went out of control. So we don't deny that.
No, but that's precisely what the Modi government says, Mr. Chidambaram, that during the COVID years, there was pressure on the Modi government to also give fiscal stimulus packages. The government resisted it, didn't go the way of other Western economies, and that's why we are in a better position than many other countries in the world today.
The government was wrong. The government was wrong in not doing a fiscal stimulus. That's why 3 crore people had to migrate from other cities and states back to Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. We had uncounted and unaccounted deaths in the pandemic. We had bodies floating down the river Ganga. We had funeral pyres on the banks of rivers. See, Neelkanth and Mr. Modi are speaking about half of India. For example, the 2 examples he gave, top 500 companies, foreign direct investment. It makes sense only to the first 70 crore of India. It makes no sense at all to the bottom 70 crore of India. And even if 70 crore of India buy and sell and go around, India's economy will look shining. But what about the bottom 70 crore? Therefore, Mr. Modi neglected the bottom 70 crore, and I squarely charge this government of having neglected the poor and the very poor.
Neelkanth Mishra, you want to respond? Because this was a contentious issue right through the COVID period, whether there should be fiscal, whether the government of the day should go in for a major fiscal stimulus. The government resisted pressures from the likes of Mr. Chidambaram, and today it turns around to say, look, that's why our inflation situation is far better than it is in many Western economies. That explains why we look at the moment from the outside at least as more macroeconomically stable.
I'll answer that question in two parts. The first is that, remember that we are chronically dependent on external capital. We've always had a current account deficit. We need foreign flow of capital. If we are seen, so if you are the US, where you can print dollars and consume, and of course, as we are realizing, that creates its own issues, which they are facing now, but they could get away with it. I don't think the global markets would have kept giving us dollars, and that would have created a lot more of instability. And I don't think that would have been the right thing to do. But look at what is happening now. See, when you lock people down, what slows down is not as much goods consumption, but services consumption, because contact services get affected. And services consumption is mostly about the rich buying the poor's time. It's rarely about the poor buying the rich's time. And when that stops, so at the end of the lockdowns, the rich had a lot of savings. The poor were very badly affected. They had very weak balance sheets. They had to shed assets. But once the economy opened up and the rich started spending, that money has started to flow. Mm-hmm. This is a pattern that is now visible across the global economy. It is visible in India. If you see data, so I'll back it up with data. Our equivalent of unemployment claims is, which you see in the US, right, repeatedly quoted, is Narega demand. Narega demand in February is lower than February 20, pre-pandemic. It is significantly lower than February 19. You look at rural wage growth. Rural wage growth had been stuck in a rut even before 2020. It is now at 6.5%. For the first time in 3 years, it is positive in real terms. So it is now higher than inflation. So there is a certain process of healing. If you try to over-interrupt the process in the economy, then you can actually do some damage. So I think Mr. Chidambaram is absolutely right that during the pandemic, the poor were very, very badly affected. But I think the right and the more sustainable way to get them back to health is to let the savings happen and the economy naturally rebalance itself.
You want to respond, Mr. Chidambaram?
Yes.
You was shaking your head. But please throw a number. This is only about data.
Yeah, here is a number. 1.4 crore fewer Indians employed in October 22 than in January 20. Second, Raghuram Rajan, Rohit Lamba, Rahul Chauhan jointly wrote an article, India's humming economy isn't yet helping much of its low-income citizens who need the education deficit bridged and policies that promote job creation. Again, Mr. Mishra talks about only half of India. The other half is what I'm concerned about. He's talking the language that we first made popular in India after 1991. So I'm not denying all that he says, but that makes sense only to the top half of India. Not even the top half, but I'm willing to divide India into the bottom half and the top half. If child stunting and wasting is between 20 and 30%, if 49% of all women are anemic, what does that mean? It means that people do not have enough food. The only reason for child stunting and child wasting and anemic women is because they don't take enough nutritious food. Now, you look at the spanking new bridge, a flyover, and you say, what a remarkable achievement. That is what he's doing. But what about the people who are huddled under the bridge and live there day and night? That is the bottom half. And this government is completely callous and neglects the bottom half. I want Mr. Mishra to travel with me. I can take him to a relatively developed state like Tamil Nadu and take him into the interior. And in village after village, you will see that the poor constitute about 15 to 20 to 25% of the people.
The government will respond, Mr. Chidambaram, to what you've just said by saying, look, during COVID, we provided 80 crore Indians food free of cost, rationed subsidies. We provided under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Yojana, quarterly 2,000 rupees to farming communities. We have done whatever we had to in terms of welfare schemes during the COVID pandemic to offset the difficulties faced by those whom you keep saying are at the bottom of the pyramid.
Yes, but not enough. That's the point. Every government has to do something. They did, but not enough. My point is, emphasize the not enough, as a result of which there was massive unemployment, massive hunger. Why are we 101 on the hunger index? You can always rubbish that. Why are we 101 on the hunger index out of 120 countries?
Neelkanth?
So I must say that my ancestral village is in Champaran, in East Champaran in Bihar. It is, on some measures, the third poorest district of Bihar. So I have seen poverty. I have seen how things have changed. And now I have seen how things are changing now. In the last 3 years, every house in the village has electricity. When we did up for the first time fans in our rural house, I was surprised that there was an electrician in the village. There is
Are you saying all of this happened post 2014? Are you saying electrification came post 2014? Seriously, Neelkanth Mishra?
Actually, India became independent in 2014.
I'm not saying that. No, see, I am an economist. I look at data.
Sure.
When it happened, what happened, I'm perhaps less qualified to say. What I can say is that when I now travel to my village, there is a lot less of poverty that I see. And I can see piped water. I can see people in pakka houses. It's very hard to see mud huts and thatch roofs. I can see people commuting to nearby cities. So I think the change, if we think about it, has to be more in terms of providing infrastructure, providing access to internet, providing access to opportunities. And look, if you divide growth into 3 parts, and I'll take 1 minute on this, you can grow output by adding labor, you can grow output by adding capital, or you can grow output by improving productivity. Now, in labor input, I don't think there is much more that we can do. What we need to do, if we have to really grow GDP and grow output and really match what China did, China grew so much faster than us from 1980 to till very recently. It was because it attracted mass and created massive amounts of capital. And that is the only way to pull hundreds or tens of millions of people out of poverty. And I think driving productivity growth requires that individuals there are rural roads connecting to every village. People have access to cheap data so that they can access jobs. There is less friction in the job market. I think all of those things are changing.
Let's look at infrastructure in 2 parts. You want to throw a number again?
No, I'm not throwing a number. You cautioned me that this is about numbers, and he is quoting numbers. Here is an official number. 3 out of 4 rural homes without piped drinking water. This is the NSSO, National Statistics Office. Second, survey debunks Swachh Bharat's 100% ODF claim. Over 21% of rural households do not have access to any type of toilet, according to a government survey.
Which also means, sir, pre-2014, much of which was ruled by your party, most Indians did not have access also to piped water. So just as they can't argue that India changed post-2014, they could turn around and say, look, much didn't happen pre-2014.
Nobody denies that. Nobody denies that. Roads are built every year.
Sure.
Our homes are built every year. Rome is not built in a day.
Sure.
The point is, all the things that were done and all the things that were being done are being improved upon. But don't make a claim that India is ODF. Don't make a claim, as he just made, every house has got a piped drinking water. Don't make these claims. The numbers who are denied basic facilities are staggering. They are large enough to constitute many countries. Once you recognize this hard truth, that there is a 20% or 25% or 30% or 35% that is very poor, no electricity, no toilet, no access to cooking fuel. Once you recognize that, I'm not complaining about the government's efforts to improve things. But don't say everything is done.
Let me try and extract a concession out of each of you. From you, Mr. Chidambaram, do you concede that in the last 8 years, in terms of physical infrastructure, in pure terms of Capex outlay on physical infrastructure, in terms of actual project execution, especially roads, and I can throw the figures, Capex outlay in the budget 23-24 hiked by 33% to 10 lakh crores, would you concede that that is an area where the Modi government has done well above average?
See, 5 years from today, the capital expenditure will be 20 lakh crore.
But in terms of the road outlay per day that has been added in the last 8 years.
I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. This was started by Vajpayee, the Golden Quadrilateral, and the NHAI was started by us, and the NHAI started building roads. And as every year passes, the capacity and the pace of building roads will increase. 5 years later, whoever is the government, it will increase again. 10 years later, it will increase again. Therefore, the point is, I'm not denying that there is growth, there is building infrastructure. But all I'm pointing out is the massive numbers that are left behind. And who is talking about it?
And on the other side, the possible concession that someone who's close to the Prime Minister's economic, or is part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, the investments made by this government in education, for example. The Education Ministry's budget allocation increased by a marginal 8.2% from 1.2 lakh crores as opposed to 1.4 lakh crores in 22-23. This government has simply not invested enough in education, which is critical. You gave the China example. China is not just about its physical infrastructure, it's also about the soft infrastructure that China built, especially in education. This government is not seen to have done enough. Do you concede that?
See, if you see the growth in infrastructure also, it is mostly in sectors controlled by the center. So it is in national highways, it is in railways, it is in airports, it is in the major ports. It is very difficult to micromanage. And so one area where I think we need to do a lot of investments and we're not doing enough is urban infrastructure. But that's something that the center struggles to do. And I must say that while there is, I think, sufficient acknowledgement that there is a lot more that needs to be done on health and education, because you know, the adults who will be driving our economy in 2047 need to get good nutrition today and good education today. And I think that needs urgent attention. But there is very limited ability for the center to do it. But I'm quite encouraged that some of the states are starting to take very positive steps on that.
Let's look at another critical area, MSMEs, which are critical to future growth. A recent survey by Consortium of Indian Associations Neelkanth Mishra states 72% of MSMEs have remained stagnant since the past 5 years. 76% of MSMEs were not making a profit. Access to bank finance remains a major issue. Do you believe that MSMEs is another area where the Modi government has promised more than it's delivered? Yes?
See, MSME funding, if you go back even 70, 80 years, this is a classic problem of the financial system and the way it is architected. And this has been there in the US, in UK, even today they struggle with it. The whole starting point of the venture capital industry in the US was this small business innovation program where the government realized that banks were unable to give loans to small companies. So it's a continuing challenge. I think the best way to support MSMEs is to improve formalization, to improve penetration of data. If you look at schemes like the account aggregator scheme, the fact that there is so much data now coming in through GST, through UPI, through FASTag, and lots of other, or like the e-way bills. There are innovative schemes that can be created, but these things take, so that whole infrastructure takes time to build. The quantum, or rather the size of loans that can be given profitably has definitely gone down, right? So earlier, if you talked about a loan ticket size of 5 or 10 lakhs or below, it was very difficult to give those loans. But I think now we are seeing 50,000, 30,000 rupee loan ticket sizes being given. So I think there is visible improvement. For MSMEs to do well, we need the broader economy to do well. And I think that healing process is only just now taking off. So I think we should see improvement in the next year or so.
Because Neelkanth Mishra briefly referred to GST. These are the numbers, Mr. Chidambaram. Monthly GST revenues now more than 1.4 lakh crores for 12 straight months in a row. So something obviously is happening on the ground that suggests that manufacturing is picking up, that the economy is picking up.
No, GST is both on goods and services.
That's right.
Therefore, the point is GST collections are getting better because the hardware, the backbone is getting better, and leakages are being plugged more efficiently. But then the credit must go equally to the center and to the states, because 50% of the GST payers are under the jurisdiction of the states, and only 50% are under the jurisdiction of the center. The center assumes that the states have no role. GST collections will improve. It's like saying, I'm wiser this year because I'm older. You will be wiser next year, you will be older again. Every year, things will be added. But that is no credit. The question is, how many people are you leaving behind? Now, Mishra said about higher education. Now, 18,956 posts, that is 33% of all teaching posts are vacant in central universities. 33% of all teaching posts are vacant in central universities. In IITs, out of 8,153 sanctioned posts, 3,253 are vacant. Now, why is the central government not filling IITs and central universities directly under the control of the central government? You have something like 33 to 40% of teaching posts vacant. What is the answer of the education minister?
Let me turn to another area, Mr. Chidambaram, because there was a speech that you delivered in Parliament that's gone viral since. Because in that speech, you had questioned the whole digital payment focus of the government of India, where you had suggested in a way that will someone who lives in a small village be able to understand how the UPI interface will work? Will there be the necessary network there? Now, the truth is, 40% of the entire world's digital payments took place last year in just India. In FY21, India processed 22.28 billion transactions, amounting to rupees 41.03 trillion. And India's digital payments market is expected to more than triple from $3 trillion to $10 trillion by 2026. So you seem to be very skeptical of the digital revolution that the Modi government spoke about. The fact is the digital revolution is here. The vegetable vendor is using UPI.
Read that speech again. They started by saying, after demonetization, we'll have a cashless economy. That was a central issue. Then they modified it to say, not cashless, less cash economy. I pointed out that however digitalization takes place, whatever pace, there will be more cash in circulation. I've been proved right. Today, there are 33 lakh crore cash in circulation, more than twice it was on the day before demonetization. Digitization will take place. At the same time, cash will also grow. 80% of Germany's payments are cash. But that doesn't mean Germany does not believe in digitization or Germany does not use digitization. Both are necessary. Digitization will take place. It will gather pace, but more and more cash will also be necessary and will be used.
Are you going to give the Modi government any credit, though, for the acceleration of the pace of digitization?
Undenying, they built on our Aadhaar, so they should thank us. they built on our Aadhaar, they built on
Which you didn't take enough credit for.
Please understand, we started Aadhaar only in 2012-13. We were in office only for a year. Dr. Rangarajan, when he was governor, started the no-frills account or zero balance account, which is now called Jan Dhan account. So both initiatives were taken up by the UPA, and I am willing to share credit with the NDA government that Aadhaar and the Jan Dhan are our joint effort.
Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, I'm glad to hear that sometimes governance and governments can be seen as a continuum. But in conclusion, if there was one aspect, Neelkanth Mishra, of the government's management of the economy over the last 9 years that you believe leaves a lot to be desired, if you'd like to see one major change in the direction that the Modi government has taken this economy in the last 9 years, what would that be, Neelkanth? What would you like to see happen that hasn't happened, that you believe can be truly transformative if we look forward to the next decade?
No, I think to continue with where I left off on that split between labor capital and TFP, if we need to accelerate growth, see, we have about 30 years. By 2053, our average age will be above 40. We do not want to grow old before we grow rich. And we cannot be satisfied with 7% growth. We have to aspire for 8-9% growth. To grow faster, we need a lot more of foreign capital. We need a lot more of foreign skills and technology. And to do that, we need to ease the bottlenecks that foreign firms face when they come to India. For example, in, say, signing advanced pricing agreements, like, if it's a subsidiary of a foreign company which is setting up here, it'll always be vulnerable to harassment by tax authorities, and therefore just providing some certainty and streamlining that process. Vietnam does it in 4 weeks. It takes us 6 months. I think those are things that if we speed up, I think we can sustainably accelerate India's growth.
Mr. Chidambaram, in conclusion, the other day, Deepak Bagla, who heads Invest India in the government of India, delivered a speech where he threw up figures about foreign direct investment coming into India over the last few years. And some of those figures clearly showed a quantum jump in foreign direct investment. So in conclusion, I'm only throwing that as one number, but in conclusion, would you, there was one thing that you would give this government credit for in the last 8 years, because surely over 8-9 years, governments do things that are to be seen as positive, what would the big plus point for you be in the Modi government's handling of the economy?
After the bitter experience of 2009 to 11, and when I came back to the finance ministry, the lesson I learned and tried to inculcate through government was, we must manage our debt. We must manage our borrowing, because that's the single most important factor which affects credit, which affects inflation, which affects our ability to spend. And I would give credit to this government for its single-minded focus on containing the deficit and the debt management.
It's taken me 35 minutes to get you to give the government some credit, but that's a good sign.
But you don't ask me for that number. You were throwing up numbers which are these India shining numbers. You were throwing numbers, and I've given you numbers, and I didn't hear Neelkanth deny any of these numbers. Vacancies in IIT, vacancies in central universities, 21%, no access to toilets, total number of employment has fallen down by 1.2 crore. None of those numbers were refuted. These are all official numbers. And therefore, all I'm saying is, this is our government. Whether we voted or not, it's our government. We have to take credit for whatever the government is doing, and I have no hesitation in giving credit to where it is due. But all I'm pointing out is there is so much more to be done, so much more to be done, and a prime minister with so much energy and drive and control over his party and government can do so much more. Instead of that, we're talking about a non-interview and a documentary. Why are we wasting time on those things?
Well, you in Parliament, you're a member of Parliament, you should perhaps on Monday morning go to Parliament and say, let's have a debate on health and education and investments and teacher absenteeism in central universities.
I'll say that at 11 o'clock.
Instead of talking about what Mr. Modi said or what Mr. Rahul Gandhi said, maybe let's talk on hard numbers.
I'm willing to say that at 11 o'clock, but before I complete my sentence, the House will be adjourned.
Okay. Given that unfortunate reality, perhaps the conclave is the only place where we can get a relatively non-noisy, certainly non-noisy, and at some level even a bipartisan debate on the state of our economy, which is why it's precious to have these spaces. Neelkanth Mishra, P. Chidambaram, thank you so much for joining me here on the India Today Conclave. Thank you.